Once upon a time, there were millions of businesses struggling. Every day they wasted time, effort, and energy on repetitive tasks that added no value. One day, the Better Automation podcast by PROCESIO came to help them find the way. Because of this, these businesses save time, reduce costs, innovate, and make better decisions. Because of that, these businesses grow, scale, and use human creativity to change this world. Hello, my name is Aziz, and I'm your host at Better Automation Podcast by PROCESIO, where I interview the world's top experts and share their very best ideas on how to improve automation in your business, processes, and life. My guest today is Georges Duverger. Georges is the head of product at Draftbit, which was, supported by YCombinator W18. He is an ex-engineer at eBay and Hunch, which was acquired. Georges is a butter enthusiast at Telegram Cookies, a twin dad, and a French national. Georges, how are you today?
I'm very good. Thanks for having me on your podcast. I'm really excited.
Me too. I'm honored. I'm privileged. I'm lucky. And I know you have spent a lot of time thinking about the future of work, the future of software development. So what do you currently think about the whole topic?
Yeah, the future of software development is definitely on my mind a lot. I think it's a broad topic, but to try to just share some of my thoughts on the topic. There are a lot of interesting things going on right now in software development, in computer science in general. So, between blockchain and which most people would be exposed to through like NFT and crypto, and all the work around metaverse, machine learning is still we're still discovering very interesting use cases. And NoCode is one of those interesting topic in computer science. And while I'm not particularly qualified to talk about the first three, like blockchain, metaverse, and machine learning, I definitely have more experience in the NoCode space, having worked at Draftbit for a few years. And I guess the way I'm thinking of NoCode right now, I really think that NoCode has two competitors. So the alternative to NoCode right now would be, on one end, Apathy, and on the other end, code itself. And so what I mean by that, apathy is a little bit of a strong word, and I don't mean that in a overly judgmental way, but there's, if you can picture like a spectrum, on the left-hand side, you got apathy, which is, 8 billion people on Earth, and like most of them, through not having the chance or the opportunity or the privilege to learn how to code and or learn some concept about computer science, they have, I'm sure they're very creative, no doubt about it, and they could provide a lot of interesting experiences, but they don't have the mean or the energy or the time and the resources to create those digital experiences. So that's what I put in the bucket of apathy. And again, not in a judgmental way for those folks. And on the other side of the spectrum, you've got code itself. So, there is 30 million developers who did have their chance to learn a code, and now they're very powerful in the society. They can create very interesting experiences. And so I put no code in the middle of that spectrum, right in the center. And the interesting thing is that it's spreading in both directions, the entire no code space. So you've got tools and services that are aiming to lower the bar, so it's way more user-friendly and people can just get started and express all that creativity, and hopefully to get that 8 billion people to the ability to create digital experiences. So tools like, to give a few names for people to relate a little bit more, like Glide is doing a great job at that. Card is doing a great job at that. Like the simple experiences, very user-friendly to bring those concepts, to make those concepts accessible. The trade-off, though, because there's often a trade-off, is that it's a little limited, right? The experience you can create in those environments are a little limited, and it's definitely a mission-driven company, so it's completely fine to do that trade-off in that context. On the other end, going back to the second competitor, which is code itself. So I think Draftbit and a few other companies are more and more competing against code itself. So like now, in the case of Draftbit, it's starting to make sense to use Draftbit as opposed to build to do it in code, even for the people who do know the code. And there are other examples. We're not the only one. Like, look, you will not necessarily think of building your own database now. You might use Airtable, even if you do know how to use how to create a database. You might you might not want to create a marketing website, even though you do know HTML and CSS. You might use Webflow instead. And for a backend, you might use like Xano or Firebase. Like all those tools now, like they lower the need to do it yourself, even though you know how. And as a side note, it's been interesting for me because I was a software engineer and now I'm in product, and I'm not really preaching that transformation, but I've really lived it. So I used to code everything, and slowly but surely over the last couple of years now, I'm defaulting to those no-code tools. So that's kind of how I think of the spectrum. And in terms of, because it's a long answer, but the prompt was like the future of software. So like, what does it look like in the future? I don't have a good sense of what the competitive landscape will be. Like if it's a winner takes all market, like if you have one of those big folks I mentioned, or maybe someone I did not even mention, who take that entire spectrum. It seems hard because you're really going for two different strategy, but maybe there'll be a couple of different players, one for each of those strategy. The thing that's a little bit more clear in my head, regardless of who wins those markets, is that we won't be writing code over the next few years. Maybe in 5 years, like 20 or 30% of the code is not being written by hand. It's just using one of those visual developments. So the same way we're not writing binary code, you will not write code anymore. I see that as a natural evolution. And so that leaves me with questions. So like, how do we get there? I don't think it's automatic that we're gonna get to that point. I think it's a lot of work to be put into it. So Draftbit, we worked at it every day to like, how do we make that future reality? And the other question that leaves me with is, what does that change once you got, even in the next couple of years, you got 20, 30% of code being written through visual development tools and services? Like, what does that change for the ecosystem? So those are the kind of thing that I'm thinking of on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you. I love this. I have questions about both sides of the spectrum. So I'll begin with the apathy side. And maybe on a side note that can be interesting to the viewers is that there is something called the status quo bias, which is often when you lose a sale or people don't take action, it's not because they went to a competitor, it's because change is so scary for human beings that they will do nothing rather than make a decision or change, because the devil is safer than the devil you don't know. And therefore, speaking about that, I spoke one time to one of the founders of a no-code tool that is in the other direction, that's supposed to help developers save time by working in a visual development environment so that they don't waste time on things that are too simple and that don't require thinking. But he said, look, you cannot take any person like a gardener from the street and make him a visual no-code developer. It's not like that. He needs to understand software architecture. He needs to have the basics of software engineering. And therefore, this dream of citizen developer was to him just an illusion. I know I'm playing the devil's advocate. What's your perspective on this?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I think the holy grail is to be able to be both simple and powerful. So like both sides, to like address both ends of that spectrum I was talking about. And I think we might get there, but more importantly, it's hard to get there right away. It's hard for that to be your destination on day one. So we kind of have to like figure out intermediary milestones for like not only from a business point of view, because you still need to like run a business in while you're building that holy grail, but also from like you want to grow with the market. You want to grow with the creators, the no coders, and people who do know the code, people who don't know the code. Things are changing. Like there is also schools now teach you different things. Like the whole ecosystem is evolving, so you want to evolve with it. So in that sense, right now, the first milestones, and that's more for personal opinion, but I think no code now is, or the better way to phrase it, no code is for coders for now. And the for now is the key part in that thing. It's really, if you know how to code, if you're a software engineer, developer, whatever it is, I strongly believe like right now is your shot. Like right now you should embrace. A lot of people are scared. A lot of people who do know the code are scared of those no-code tools. I would argue the exact opposite. Right now you can significantly accelerate your development time, your, like how you validate ideas and assumption, because you already have all those concepts. And all those concepts of like what's a client, what's a server, what's an API, what's an endpoint. Like you know those things, so you have a significant advantage over everybody else. So embrace it. Like those power users think they should get the most out of it. And so as a consequence, we on the like vendor side, like the people who build the tools, we want to work with those folks to improve the platform and then slowly make our way to people who don't know the code. And longer term, we do definitely want together. Now, the question you ask, like, can anybody do it, even in the future, if they don't have those concepts? I'm not as black and white as the person you're referring to, because like maybe there are better abstractions. Maybe as we go down as we lower the bar, maybe we'll find like more intuitive abstraction for user, and they don't have to understand maybe a server and a client and an API and an endpoint, and maybe it's something else. Maybe it's I don't know, maybe like I'm trying to think of like Zapier, for example, who create those like Zap. So maybe the new thing that people learn is just this concept of a Zap, which just connect two things. And we're not obviously like under the hood. You're still dealing with API and endpoints, but maybe there's a better way to communicate that to an entire category of population who haven't learned those more like traditional computer science concepts. So I don't know. Maybe I think I'm optimistic. I think we will find a way to make all those tools available to everybody, whether or not they have a computer science knowledge, but it will take something else. I guess the part where I agreeing with that person is you need something, whether it's those concepts or other concepts. You can't just expect to just click two buttons and have your dream application or your dream service come to life, unless we make a lot of progress with machine learning and auto-generated code and stuff like that, which who knows, it's not impossible.
Thank you. I have 4 questions, actually. I'll ask one because this is really a fascinating topic. And it's, a lot of the developers that come to no-code or visual development, they care about the outcome. They are choosing to use visual development software, environment, and all that. But for a lot of businesses, if they want to introduce visual development, a lot of coders, and I'm using coders specifically to compare to developers, have this disgust or disdain from abstractions like no code, where they think, I spent so many years learning how to code, and what I respect is things that are closer to machine language, and all those abstractions are for kids, and it's beneath me, and blah, blah, blah. How do you either overcome this or find the right people who don't have such thoughts as coders? Or do you even notice such thing within communities, coders, or for you as someone who knows how to code? Did you think, actually, it's powerful to know how to code, and using those abstractions, although it's easier, there is some inner resistance to it because of ego?
Yeah, we definitely see some of that. It's hard to quantify, though. That's a topic. That's a very good question, because that's a topic that comes often. Like, can you really sell no-code tool to software engineers? And there is a feeling that that category of folks, which I belong to be honest, like, will react against it. But I don't know if we've seen that. Anecdotally, we definitely hear some stuff like that. But I don't know if it's the majority of people. I don't know. I think it's still to be proven. If it is, though, look, I think the ego is really hard to like fight against, right? So like the two ways, either the person is willing, like is open-minded a little bit and gonna give it a try. And like I was mentioning earlier, like I went through that journey myself, and I do a lot of side project, and I used to, in a few minutes put out a web server and a little page and a little backend and a little like Python application and all that. And slowly but surely, over like experimenting with those tools, I can picture doing that again. Like if I want a backend, I'll fire up Xano and they do. I think you also get to the point where like those tools now do a significantly, definitely at least as good as what you will do yourself, and in many cases even better than what you will do yourself. So like I moved from engineering to product a while ago, so I'm not maybe on completely up to speed on my engineering. So for me, those tools are amazing. They do a significantly better job than I would. And so once you experience that yourself, that might be kind of a way to slowly change your mind. But I would say one more thing though, like, look, if you don't, too bad. Like I don't mean to be like overly like or sounds like aggressive to those folks, but like if you're a software engineer right now in North America specifically, that's what I know. I can't speak too much of the rest of the world, but you already have a lot of privilege in what you can do professionally. So if you don't take the perspective to understand what's going on and decide for yourself to either embrace it, and if you decide to reject it, it's totally fine. It's your right. But then, there are consequences that are going to come with that. And the reason I feel a bit more comfortable throwing my hands in the air a little bit with that is because it's such already a privilege. I would not say that of any worker in the world. I think, some professionists, we need to help them transition to this new digital world, and we need support system, and you need like education and all those things. I have a little bit less of empathy for software developer. I think, it's hard. You really have to think of what is your profession? Like, what is your job? Is it really to write lines of code, or is it to provide technological solution to a problem? If you see yourself as, an engineer is technically, at least in my mind, is at the frontier between like science and society, right? And you create that bridge, that almost literal bridge in the case of a civil engineer between science and society. And so if you think of yourself as that, then whether it's code, no code, machine learning, like complete like verbal programming, whatever it is that we're going to invent, I think it becomes less scary in this context.
Thank you. And it's funny that you said you don't have all that empathy for software developers, since the goal is the outcomes. I spoke with the founder of NoCode Germany, and he was really, really having this thought that, look, according to him, software developers are only productive 2 hours a day, and the rest of the time is wasted, and they're abusing their power. And therefore, the future of business should be no code and low code, so that things can actually become much more resource efficient, much more productive, and that this thinking about code is only like a monopoly that they're trying to perpetuate, and therefore is trying to do some research or find a way to prove how unproductive most software developers are, so that no code can be the replacement. Do you agree with this? Do you see this as truth? What's your perspective?
It's definitely a more intense point of view than I have. I would probably not go that far, but there's some truth to that. I do have empathy for the discipline of software engineering. So having been on both sides, like product in engineering, I've been able to see really the difference of those two jobs, and they're very different. Like, I think software engineering is intellectually significantly harder. Like you solving complex problems, even problems that are not that complex, but you're still solving problem with your intellect, and you have to like structure things, and you have to stay up to date and understand technology and read documentation and test things and all that. And that's a very creative process. So you do need to like get in the zone, as we say, like get in like a flow of productivity. And so that, that takes the time to build up to that moment when you really can provide a lot of value. So maybe that kind of explains a little bit of the perceived inefficiency of software engineering, because I don't think software engineering, you can just, clock in for like 30 minutes and do like one perfect task. I think it takes a little bit of mental space. So I respect that. I think it's significantly harder, again, intellectually, than the work we do on the product side. I do, just to balance things out, I do think that working in product is psychologically significantly harder. Like it's really more intense. It's a roller coaster of like, essentially, instead of programming computer, you're trying to collaborate with humans, which is significantly harder. Like a very more like trickier, because there's not always predictability. There's no reproducibility. It's not always what's the word I'm looking for? You can't always reproduce the same results with the same input. Like so, it's a very different challenge. And so at the end of the day, working in product, I'm way more exhausted, like mentally, than I was in doing engineering. But on the other hand, like intellectually, I don't think product management is necessarily that as challenging as it is on the engineering side. Anyway, so there's a little bit of a comparison of product and engineering, but all that to say, I still do value kind of the work that software, that engineering is doing. And so I would not necessarily classify as what the person you're referring to was saying. It's like it's a waste of time. It's like the only productive 2 hours a day. I think it's a little unfair and extreme.
Thank you. And let's go back to the other side of the spectrum that you spoke about, which is no code for normal people, for people without a software engineering background and all that. I spoke to the founder of one of the biggest creators of courses for the no-code community. And he was observing that nowadays, a lot less people are learning courses about no-code itself and are moving to no-code ops, which is more about automation, processes, and things like that. And he was wondering, is no-code a fad? Is it something that's happening now, like NFTs or Bitcoin or whatever, and it will go away? Or is it something that will be there in the future in the same form for citizen developers and normal people, or not? What's your perspective on this?
It's hard to predict if it's a fad. You can decide to look at it like it looks very similar to other fads we've seen in the past, but you can also look at it as a more like fundamental shift to how we do software development. I do though agree that it looks like it's about to follow that, what is it, the Gartner like hype cycle, where like right now there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of excitement. There is a lot of investment. There is probably a no-code, whether it's a mobile app builder or a web app builder, like starting on average, maybe every month. So there's a lot of people trying to get into the space, and all those like smaller tools around that ecosystem, which is great, creates a lot of energy, and everybody talks about it and all. It's possible that over the next couple of years we go through that like. I forgot the exact term, but like, the people losing a lot of trust or a lot of motivation or excitement about that trend. But it's a natural thing in this context. And, once we do, I think it's because we bring back all that excitement to actual use cases. And so maybe, we've identified a few concrete use cases right now that are here to stay. I think internal tools is one use case that, is very powerful. So like that's notion of like inside a medium size or even a big company, I can use software like Retool, for example, to create a little dashboard to like just connect all my data sources in my company, and I can do a little HR dashboard or logistic dashboard, and I don't need to include the engineering team in that. I can do it as a PM who is a little tech savvy maybe. So this is very powerful, and those tools are right now like doing they're doing a really good job, and they seem to be really good in the market as well. So I think that's here to stay. The fact is, in terms of pure web app development and mobile app development, like for external purposes, it's still not super easy. So I think I'm a little bit worried myself that people are going to get a little tired of like, I really thought it was easier. I thought we were further in the process. And the reality is, whether you use Draftbit or one of our competitors, pretty much everybody in the space, it still takes a little bit of effort. And we'll get there, we'll make it simpler, but that's going to take a little bit of time. So we need folks who are willing to put that time in. So we might lose a good amount of excitement for the people who are just slightly interested in that space. But it's okay, they might go away, and then we'll just, hopefully company like ours and others will just then kind of keep building on those core use cases. And when we get out of that cycle in 5 years, I think we'll maybe talk less about NoCode as a thing and more like we will just use it. Think of like machine learning. Machine learning, it's still extremely popular, and we do amazing things with it. It's a little bit less of a like topic by itself. We think of applications now. You got DALL-E and all those new things that come up, and so the applications are now exciting, and so it started to be more like ingrained or like part of our processes more than just a new way of doing things. I think people get it from machine learning, and they're going to get it from NoCode in a few years.
Thank you. And since you mentioned how there is this future for NoCode and milestones along the way, for someone who is curious, can you explain in your own vision what's the ultimate, best scenario or best vision for a visual development app? What could it theoretically do in best case? And what's the next milestone you believe should be focused on within the community right now to get the tools much more easy to use, usable, whatever it is that takes you towards that ultimate goal?
So long term is, again, like Holy Grail, you have one tool that is simple and powerful. So picture like you have this company online, and you go and you click a few things, and you can very quickly create like a mobile app. I'm going to talk about mobile app because that's what I know the most with Draftbit. And it's very easy, intuitive. You don't need to know a ton about computer science, and you can produce an app and distribute it in the App Store. That's kind of the ideal. I'm not 100% convinced that there will be one player that does that, as opposed to maybe at the very least like two players. One who does the very easy version of that. Like you could do a couple of clicks, but then it's a limited application. You got a list view, you got a detail view, and it's kind of a tailored experience for you. And the other player might be very powerful. It's just like just a layer on top of maybe React Native or whatever code you're using. So maybe it's two different things, but hopefully in both those scenarios, the goal is that people will have the tool they need to do what they want. So if people don't know how to want something user friendly and limited, they can do that. Someone who wants something more powerful, they can do that. So that's kind of the 5 year kind of hope. In terms of milestone now, I think for Draftbit, I think we need to get to a feature parity with everything you could do in code. So that means, again, in the context of mobile app, you need to do push notification, you need to do deep linking, you need to do all those kind of core functionality of a mobile app, and the same exists for web app. Like you'll have to do all the things that people expect from web app. So and we're very close. Like we do have deep linking, we do have push notification in Draftbit. So there's still the things we're working on, but once we're at parity, I think that gives you a sense of, that's a required step towards keep making it better. You need to at least be able to do the same thing that people were doing in code. And that's for us, because as I mentioned at the beginning, we're spreading towards like competing against code itself. For people who are trying to make everything easier, I think for them, the milestone is what's the next use case, the most common use case they want to support. So right now, because they can't do it all. That's part of the compromise they've made. So they have to like limit what they do to a specific use case. And the one that most people went with right now is kind of a list view, and you click on an item and you see a detailed view. And that's one kind of use case that is pretty cool because it addresses a lot of, your HR application where you see a list of all the employees in like internal app for a company. It works for like a grocery store, to-do list. So it covers a lot of use case, but maybe those folks need to figure out what's the next important use case to address. And maybe it is about like geolocation. Maybe they need to turn geolocation into something a little constrained, but super easy for people to implement into the app. So yeah, I think that's the fundamental difference. Like they have to think in terms of use cases, and we have to think in terms of like building blocks. So it's slightly different approach, but hopefully we all get there.
Thank you. This is wonderful. So can you speak now for those curious about Draftbit? What is it? What makes it unique? Where people can learn more? What's the website? And I'll make sure to write your Twitter and the website of Draftbit in the description.
Yeah, absolutely. So Draftbit, the DNA of the company is what makes us unique. We started by a very strong engineering team, and not only strong in terms of skills, but in terms of also like philosophy. We really embrace like an open way of building software. So like the main thing you get when you use Draftbit is that we show you the code, which is not something a lot of people do. Like as you make changes visually, like change blocks and widgets and components and stuff like that, you can see the code, the React Native code, which we based on Evolve. You can see it change, and you can copy paste it. You can take it somewhere else. We let you push to GitHub, so we let you export the entire app. So it's just one click. It's a button. You export the entire app. In a couple of minutes, you'll get your entire React Native application outside of Draftbit. No dependency, no like fine prints, nothing. So you can, if you wanted to, you could stop your Draftbit subscription and you have your React Native product, and you can take it from there and start to work with a developer if you want, or whatever you want to do. And it sounds a little risky for us as a business, but that's actually a very good illustration of what we embrace. We want to make it so even if you could have access to that code, you will still come to Draftbit because we're making it easier. So we really, we putting our money where our mouth is. Like we want to be part of that transformation of how you think of building software. So that's the main thing. That's the main kind of differentiator for Draftbit. We really like a pro code thing. Again, it doesn't mean you have to, but it means you have access to. You're not locked in. And a similar type of feature is that we also let you inject code. So for everything we don't do, because like I said, it's going to be a journey. There's a lot to build, and we don't want our power users to stop using us because they're like, oh, I can't create a component, or I can do this or that. So we do let you inject code, your own custom component that you can use in a visual way in the builder. So again, with this attitude of like, we're competing against code itself, that's why we do that. We don't want you to leave because we don't have the functionality. So we do kind of want to integrate ourselves in your workflow. So those are that's one of the main differentiators of Draftbit. The other one, which I'm very proud of, is we put a lot of time, effort, energy into our community. So we have a very active community site, which is community.draftbit.com. And the community asks questions. Every day I'm on there. We have a fantastic team of success engineers also contributing and answering questions. We do 2 office hours every week. So on Tuesday and Thursday, I'm doing the Thursday one myself, and it's just me on the equivalent of a Zoom call, taking questions, and not just taking questions theoretically, but like, doing it, like demoing how you will integrate your Draftbit application with a specific backend. So we really have this culture internally to like help the user get to the finish line. So we want to put your application in the store, and so we provide a lot of support. We even have an expert program. If you want a little bit extra help, we can do that. Or if you want us to like do a lot more help and like build the thing for you based on Draftbit, like we can also do that for you. So those two, that's kind of pro-code attitude and community driven, are really like the differentiator of Draftbit.
Thank you. That's wonderful. I recommend to all the viewers to check out Draftbit, and that sense of community sounds wonderful. And for those interested in automation, of course, I recommend PROCESIO. PROCESIO is a low-code, no-code platform, meaning people can create their own custom actions using code for advanced automation and creating an enterprise-grade backend for your software. You can request access to a totally free account at procesio.app. And for those with higher needs, there is a very generous code where you can get 50% off if you use better 50 off, one word, all in capital letters, more in the description. George, this was my honor, my pleasure, a very enriching conversation, and I wish you to keep going and have a good day.
Thank you very much. I gotta say, I listened to your podcast, and you've had fantastic and very inspiring guests. So it's really an honor to like have been among that group of folks. So thank you very much for the invite, and that was a great discussion. I appreciate it.